They told you to be humble. They told you to wait your turn. They told you that thinking highly of yourself was arrogance. And while you listened, while you played by their rules and kept yourself small, someone else walked in, took your seat at the table, and never looked back. That is the cost of borrowed belief systems. That is what obedience to other people's comfort zone does to a man's destiny. Welcome to Machiavellian Galaxy. This is not about motivation. Motivation is for people who need to feel good before they act. This is about rewiring the way you see yourself, because how you think about yourself in this moment is either your greatest weapon or the invisible cage you've been living inside your entire life. Most men walk through life apologizing for their existence, shrinking, waiting, hesitating for permission that never arrives. Machiavelli understood what the weak refuse to accept. The world does not respond to who you are, it responds to who you believe you are. And today, that belief shifts. Drop a comment right now and type, "I move in silence and let my results speak." Number 2, the identity shift. Here is the truth no one says out loud. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not too late. You have simply been operating under a false identity, one shaped by people who feared, consciously or not, what you could become if you ever saw yourself clearly. Your parents, your teachers, your environment, even your childhood circle that labeled ambition as arrogance. They didn't always lie to you with intent. Most of them did it with concern. But understand this without emotion. A comfortable lie, no matter how warmly delivered, is still a cage. Whether it's made of iron or good intentions, it restricts you all the same. Machiavelli wrote that a man must see the world as it is, not as he wishes it to be. Apply that same ruthless clarity inward. Stop seeing yourself as someone who needs things to go right. Start seeing yourself as someone who makes things go right. That shift is not arrogance. It is the foundation that separates those who act from those who only observe. The spectators wait, comment, and delay. The powerful don't wait for validation, they become the standard. And when you change how you see yourself, you stop being easy to predict. You stop being easy to control. The system depends on you believing you are less than you are. The moment you break that belief, the system loses its grip. Think of yourself as the architect, never the material. Decide your dimensions, and the world will have no choice but to adjust. Number 3, the psychology of self-perception. What those at the top understand is simple. Self-perception isn't just confidence. It's a signal you broadcast everywhere you go. Every room, every conversation, every negotiation picks up on that signal instantly. People don't read your resume first. They read your presence, and within seconds, they decide whether you are someone to be respected or someone to be used. That silent judgment shapes everything that follows. Here is the darker truth. The most taken advantage of aren't always weak. They are often capable individuals who fail to project their own value. They underplay themselves, over-explain, seek approval, and hesitate when they should act. And those who understand human behavior recognize this immediately. They don't see humility, they see opportunity. Machiavelli understood this. Perception shapes reality. A man perceived as strong commands a different world than a man waiting to prove himself. How you see yourself shapes how you present yourself. How you present yourself shapes how the world responds. And that determines which doors open and which stay closed. Drop a comment and type, "I am the signal, not the noise." Number 4, the cold truth about power. Power is never given. It is not handed out by institutions or earned through waiting. Power is taken by the man who decides, internally and without permission, that he will no longer live below his potential. That decision is silent, but it is absolute. Every real transformation begins there. Not in public, but in private. The world is not a pure merit system. It rewards positioning, awareness, and certainty. The man who knows his value, who doesn't flinch under pressure, who doesn't shrink under resistance, that man walks away with more than the one who only relies on effort. Effort alone is invisible. Identity gives it weight. Machiavelli noted that it is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. Not about cruelty, but about certainty. A man who is certain, composed, and difficult to manipulate creates a presence that others respect instinctively. This is not dominance through force. This is dominance through control of self. And here is where the shift becomes real. Inspiration without action is entertainment. You need standards, non-negotiable ones. A man without standards bends to everything. A man with standards reshapes everything around him. Drop a comment. I do not chase, I attract. I do not beg, I become. Number 5. The art of becoming untouchable. Untouchable does not mean nothing affects you. It means nothing controls you without your permission. It is built on a clear, unshakable sense of identity. When that is in place, external chaos, opinions, setbacks, betrayal doesn't penetrate. It hits, but it doesn't move you. And the world will test this constantly, because the world always searches for cracks, points where confidence turns into doubt. That is not paranoia, that is reality, and how you stand in that reality determines everything that follows. This is the honest observation of human nature that Machiavelli built his entire philosophy upon. People, consciously and unconsciously, push against boundaries to discover whether those boundaries are real or merely decorative. The man who folds under that pressure teaches the world exactly how to handle him. The man who holds, who does not explain himself, who does not over-justify his position, who simply remains unmoved, that man teaches the world something entirely different. He teaches it that there are no edges to find, that the boundary extends as far as the eye can see, and people by nature do not endlessly push against something that shows no sign of yielding. This is where Machiavellian thinking and Stoic discipline converge into something extraordinarily powerful. The Stoics taught that the only domain truly under your control is your own mind, your own judgment, your own response to what life places in front of you. Machiavelli taught that the man who masters his external positioning, who understands how power flows and how perception shapes reality, becomes a force that bends circumstance rather than being bent by it. Combine these two philosophies inside a single man, and what you get is something the world rarely sees and never forgets. A man who is internally sovereign and externally strategic. A man who feels everything and is moved by nothing. A man who sees the game being played around him with absolute clarity, chooses his moves with cold precision, and executes without hesitation and without apology. But here is what no one tells you about becoming untouchable. It requires a level of self-honesty that is genuinely painful, because before you can build the fortress, you have to walk through every room of who you currently are, including the dark rooms, the embarrassing rooms, the rooms where your fears live and your excuses were born, and you have to look at all of it without blinking. The man who cannot face himself honestly will never be able to present himself powerfully. The cracks you refuse to examine internally will always find a way to show themselves externally at the worst possible moment, in front of the worst possible audience. Self-awareness is not weakness. It is the foundation upon which every lasting form of power is built. So here is what you must do. Not tomorrow, not after you feel ready, because that feeling will never arrive on its own. Right now, begin constructing the version of yourself you have been postponing. Define with sharp and uncompromising clarity who that man is, how he thinks, how he speaks, what he tolerates and what he does not, where he is going and why nothing will stop him from arriving there. Write it down if you have to. Speak it out loud in the silence of a room where no one can hear you, because the declaration matters, the internal commitment matters. It is the first stone laid in the foundation of the untouchable identity you are building. Every empire in history began not with the first brick placed in a wall, but with the unshakable decision in one man's mind that the wall would be built. You are that man. This is that moment. Drop a comment right now and type the words, "I am building something the world is not ready for," because you are, and the world is about to find out. Number 6, silence, strategy, and the power of being misunderstood. Here is something the powerful have known for centuries that the average man has never been taught and will likely spend his entire life without understanding. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is not weakness. Silence is not the absence of something. Silence is a weapon. It is arguably the most sophisticated, the most misunderstood, and the most underutilized weapon in the arsenal of any man who is serious about accumulating and protecting his power. The man who has mastered silence has mastered something that most human beings are constitutionally incapable of. Because silence requires the one thing modern society has been systematically destroying in men for decades: patience, stillness, the ability to sit inside discomfort without immediately reaching for relief through explanation, justification, or the desperate need to be understood by people who were never qualified to understand you in the first place. Let me be direct with you. You have been over-explaining yourself your entire life. You have been justifying your decisions to people who had no authority over your destiny. You have been sharing your vision with individuals whose only qualification was proximity, not wisdom. And every time you opened your mouth to defend who you are or where you are going to someone who never asked in good faith, you leaked power. You handed someone a map to your insecurities. You gave them the exact coordinates of your self-doubt and dressed it up as honesty. Real honesty does not require an audience. Real confidence does not require validation, and real power does not require explanation. The lion does not walk through the jungle announcing his intentions to the other animals. He moves, he acts, and the results speak in a language that requires no translation. Machiavelli was clear on this point. He wrote that men judge more by their eyes than by their hands because everyone can see, but few can feel. What this means is simple. What people see you do matters far more than what you say you will do. Your words are cheap in a world full of promises. Your actions, your silence, your consistency in the absence of applause, these are the currencies that hold real value. The man who constantly speaks about his plans spends power he has not yet earned. The man who moves in silence and lets his results arrive before his reputation creates a mystique that no amount of self-promotion can match. And now the part that is hardest to accept. Being misunderstood is not a problem to fix. It is a price to pay. Every man who has ever operated above the crowd has been misunderstood by that crowd. They called him arrogant when he was certain. They called him cold when he was disciplined. They called him antisocial when he was selective. They called him lucky when he was prepared. Misunderstanding is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It is a sign that you are operating on a frequency others cannot yet receive. Your only obligation is to remain consistent, to keep building, to keep moving, and to refuse the temptation to lower yourself to a level of explanation that only serves to make others comfortable at the cost of your momentum. Here is the strategic truth that Machiavellian thinkers have applied across boardrooms, battlefields, and every arena of competition. Mystery is leverage. The man who is fully known is fully predictable. The man who is predictable can be managed. But the man who reveals himself selectively, who speaks with intention rather than impulse, who allows others to wonder and fill in the gaps, holds a psychological advantage no title, credential, or amount of money can buy. You become larger in the minds of others precisely because you give them less to work with and more to think about. Scarcity creates value. This applies to information, and it applies to how much of yourself you reveal to a world that has not yet proven it deserves full access to who you are and what you are becoming. Drop a comment right now and type the words, "My silence is my strategy and my results are my voice." Because from this point forward, you are done explaining yourself to people who were never positioned to understand you anyway. Number 7, the enemy within, destroying the version of you that kept you small. Everything discussed up to this point, the identity shift, self-perception, power, becoming untouchable, the weapon of silence, all of it means nothing if you refuse to confront the most dangerous adversary you will ever face. This enemy does not live outside of you. It is not the people who doubted you or the circumstances against you. It lives inside you. It has always lived inside you. And it is dangerous because it does not attack you with force. It comes quietly, rationally, often sounding like your own voice. It is the version of you that kept you small, the version that told you to wait, the version that disguised fear as caution and called hesitation wisdom, the version that whispered you are not ready every time you stood at the edge of something that could change your life. This internal enemy is built from every limitation you accepted and stopped fighting. It is the result of every time you took someone's no as a final answer instead of a temporary obstacle. It is the accumulation of every failure you allowed to define you rather than refine you. And what makes this enemy so dangerous is that he does not need to defeat you all at once. He simply needs to delay you long enough that the delay itself becomes your defeat. He needs you to wait one more day, one more month, one more year until the accumulated weight of waiting has quietly crushed the ambition out of you so completely that you forget it was ever there to begin with. Machiavelli understood that the most catastrophic losses in the arena of power are not the ones inflicted by external enemies. They are the ones that occur when a man becomes his own opposition, When his internal resistance is stronger than his external drive, when the voice inside that says, "Who are you to want this?" becomes louder than the voice that says, "I was built for exactly this." The prince who cannot govern himself cannot govern anything else. The man who has not conquered the territories within his own mind will always be conquered by the territories outside of it. This is not metaphor. This is the most practical truth in the entire philosophy of power. So what does it actually take to destroy the version of you that kept you small? It takes a decision that is made not with emotion, but with cold, surgical, irreversible finality. It takes the same ruthlessness that Machiavelli prescribed for dealing with external threats, because the internal threat deserves no less. You do not negotiate with the part of you that has been sabotaging your greatness. You do not compromise with it. You do not try to gradually ease it out of your psychology with gentle affirmations and morning routines alone. You identify it with unflinching clarity. You name exactly what it has cost you. You hold it accountable for every opportunity you did not take, every room you did not command, every version of yourself you did not become, and then you make the decision, permanent and non-negotiable, that it no longer has a seat at the table of your mind. You are not that man anymore. You are not the man who shrinks. You are not the man who waits. You are not the man who lets the noise of his own doubt drown out the signal of his own potential. That man is done. That chapter is closed. And what rises in his place is something the world is going to have to learn to reckon with. Drop a comment right now and type, "I have outgrown the version of me that was afraid," because that statement is not just words, it is a burial, and it is long overdue. Number 8, the Machiavellian standard, how the powerful truly live. Now we arrive at something that most self-improvement content will never take you to, because most self-improvement content is designed to make you feel better, not to make you more effective. And there is a profound and consequential difference between those two things. Feeling better is temporary. Being more effective is structural. Feeling better requires external stimulation, a motivational video, an inspiring quote, a moment of emotional elevation that fades. Being more effective requires something far more permanent. It requires the adoption of a standard, not a goal, not a vision board, not an affirmation, a standard. And understanding the difference between a goal and a standard is one of the most important cognitive shifts you will ever make in your pursuit of power. A goal is something you reach for. A standard is something you refuse to fall below. A goal exists in the future, which means it is always at a distance, always dependent on circumstances aligning in your favor. A standard exists right now, in this moment, in every decision you make, every boundary you enforce, every situation you choose to engage with or walk away from. The powerful man does not wake up chasing a goal. He wakes up maintaining a standard, and that standard governs everything. How he spends his time, who he allows into his inner circle, what conversations he participates in, what energy he tolerates, what he accepts from others, and what he refuses to accept from himself. The standard becomes the architecture of his life, and it is non-negotiable. Machiavelli observed that the greatest leaders were not the most talented men. They were the men who held the highest standards for themselves and built systems to enforce those standards. They understood that talent without discipline is unused potential. Intelligence without direction is wasted energy. Ambition without a standard is a fire that burns the man who carries it. The Machiavellian standard is not about perfection. It is about direction. It is about the refusal to drift, the refusal to let one bad week become a bad month, the refusal to let one compromise open the door to many. Here is what it looks like in practice. You become the hardest person in your own life to satisfy. You hold yourself accountable without mercy. Mediocrity is not something you pass through. It is something you reject completely. You build your day, your decisions, your environment around the man you are becoming, not the man you used to be. And you do this consistently, quietly, without applause, without validation, and without needing anyone to recognize the weight of your discipline. Because here is the final truth about the Machiavellian standard. The world will reflect it back to you. Not immediately, but inevitably. The world responds to the internal standards of the man who moves with conviction. When you raise your standard, you raise the quality of everything around you, opportunities, people, outcomes. The world does not rearrange itself for the man who wishes. It rearranges itself for the man who decides, at the level of identity, exactly who he is and what he will accept. Drop a comment right now and type, My standard is my identity, and my identity is untouchable, because that is not a statement about where you are going, that is a declaration about who you already are. Number 9, the world rearranges itself when everything begins to shift. This is the moment where everything we have built across this entire journey converges into a single, undeniable truth. The truth that this entire message has been pointing toward from the very beginning. The truth that Machiavelli understood, that the Stoics understood, and that every man who has risen from obscurity to consequence has discovered not through theory, but through lived experience. When you genuinely, fundamentally, and irreversibly change the way you think about yourself, the world does not just respond, it rearranges. Not metaphorically, not emotionally, but structurally. Your daily reality begins to reorganize itself around the new frequency you broadcast. Opportunities that were always present but hidden from your old identity become visible. People aligned with your next level begin to appear, while those tied to your old version naturally fall away. Doors that once felt locked reveal that they were only waiting for a man who believed he had the right to enter. Understand what is actually happening. This is not magic. It is not the universe working in your favor. It is something far more precise and far more powerful. It is the mechanical consequence of a man operating from a new internal reference point. When self-perception shifts, behavior follows. When behavior changes, decisions change. When decisions change, actions change. And when actions are repeated with consistency, conviction, and intention, results change. Over time, those results compound into a completely different reality. This is not mysticism. This is the physics of personal power applied with Machiavellian precision. But you must understand, this shift will not always feel like reward at first. In the beginning, it often feels like loss. People will leave who cannot meet your new standard. Situations you once tolerated will begin to feel unbearable because your identity has outgrown them. Comfort zones that once felt safe will start to feel like confinement because the man you are becoming can no longer exist in the same space as the man you used to be. Do not mistake this discomfort for failure. This is friction. This is the resistance that comes with real transformation. The snake does not grieve the skin it sheds. It moves forward, lighter, sharper, and ready for what it could not reach before. That is what you are doing now. You are shedding. And what is emerging is the version of you the world is about to meet for the first time. Number 10, the final decree. Become what the world cannot ignore. This is where it ends, and this is where you begin. Everything you have heard is not philosophy for entertainment. It is a dismantling, an intentional removal of every false belief, every borrowed limitation, every comfortable lie that stood between you and who you were meant to become. You came into this as one version of yourself. If you truly listened, if you allowed these ideas to land, you are leaving as something different, something sharper, something quieter, something that the world will have to deal with in a new way. Machiavelli did not write for the masses. He wrote for those who were ready to face uncomfortable truth without needing it softened. That man is you. That has always been you. The only thing that ever stood between you and your power was the way you chose to see yourself. And now that has changed. When your thinking changes, the world follows. So move forward, move in silence, build without announcing, rise without asking, and become so undeniably yourself that the world has no choice but to make space for you. Drop a comment and type, "I think differently now." The world will feel it, because it will. If this reached something real inside you, hit like, subscribe to Machiavellian Galaxy, and turn on notifications so you never miss what comes next.